What I'm doing now is recording my screen because some news was just released about 53 minutes ago. And by about, I mean plus or minus a few seconds. What was released was the third quarter GDP numbers. And the GDP numbers come from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. And what happens is I get notifications just like the business reporters and the economics reporter for CNBC in my inbox right when things are released. So well, I get that's where this gets reported upon is CNBC. That's what I like to watch for. But here this morning at 5:14, I got this email from NBER. That's the National Bureau of Economic Research, and they're giving me a notification that this is going to come out. GDP was going to come out at 8:30 a.m. It's embargoed till 8:30 a.m. So everybody in the world gets the information at the same time. That's something that's done to prevent insider trading, because if people had access to this information, they could participate in markets ahead of people who don't have access to it. So it's embargoed is the term until that time. And then some other things came out this morning too. This is the weekly claims. This is not the one from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is based on actual unemployment insurance claims. That turned out to be good information. You can see it's about 9:24 now. This came out this morning as well. But GDP is what I'm focused on now. We're covering GDP, and this is big news today. And the reason it's big news is, well, I could click on it here, but I've already opened it up here. There's the big news. So, real gross domestic product increase in an annual rate of 33.1. I believe that's an all-time record for a one-quarter jump in GDP. Of course, we know why. It's because in quarter two, woof, look at that, down, I think it's 32 or 31. It's a little hard to tell exactly there. We could go back and look in this in the Bureau of Economic Analysis page. But right here is quarter one. Quarters, of course, are 3 months because the year is 12 months, right? So this is January, February. Yes, January, February, and March, right here where my cursor is. So coronavirus began landing in the United States in February, and certainly we were becoming aware of the problem in February. So economic activity was affected in the first quarter, but not all of the first quarter. So we saw a drop there. Then the second quarter is when the shutdown really took effect. And look at that huge drop. Now, an interesting thing is if um, a variable drops by, let's say, 50%, that means it's cut in half, right? So if it was worth 100 and it falls by 50%, what's it worth? 50. Now, what happens if it rises from that point by, let's say, 50%? Does it go back to where it started? No, it goes to 75, because a 50% increase on 50 is only 25 more, and it gets you to 75. So if we fell 32%, a 32% rise doesn't get us back to where we started before this happened. These are changes from GDP, but we could probably find a graph of total GDP, and we would see that we're still below the levels we were at the beginning of the year, because we've fallen 32% in quarter two, and we've raised about 33% in quarter three, but it's a rise from a lower number, like my 150 example. Now, this is a little bit of an interesting thing to me, because when I was an undergraduate student, the definition of recession was 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, which this would meet that definition, because this is 2 consecutive quarters, and one of them is huge, by the way. Actually, this is quite large for a decline in GDP, but this is just enormous. So I was curious, are we officially in recession? See, the old definition was what I just said, 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, boom, it would be met. But now, if you look in textbooks, the definition of recession is a little bit more ambiguous. It's not as crisp and clear as that. The United States is in recession when the National Bureau of Economic Research Recession Dating Committee, or I believe the formal name is right here. There's the NBER, the what do they call themselves? I thought it was Recession Dating Committee, but it has a more formal name still than that. The Business Cycle Dating Committee. The United States is in recession when they say we're in recession. So much for the old 2 quarters thing. And so this is the group of economists who make the determination whether or not there is a recession. NBER.org is where you can go. Now, I'm going to circle back to the beginning of this little thing, back to my inbox up here. Notice this came from NBER.org. On this website, I have a login. I don't remember what it is, and I don't really care enough to get in there. You can set yourself up with a free account, and you can, and maybe you could do it here. I think, you could click login and probably say new account or click here, and presumably it would take you there. Everyone watching this knows how to get on a mailing list. And I've been on this mailing list for a number of years. And down here at the bottom is where I could unsubscribe or change my preferences. So you get to choose your preferences. This is the stuff I have. These are my preferences coming to me. This one's a tough one. It doesn't release as crisply and clearly as these other ones, but I think it's an interesting one, consumer sentiment. You too can go to nber.org and get on their mailing list so you get these notifications sent to your inbox, and you can get the news as soon as it's released to the rest of the world as well. That's something you can do if you want to. I won't take you through the steps because I'm being a little bit silly, and I know very few people watching this want to have notifications from the National Bureau of Economic Research. But, okay, so to be clear, this is a group of economists. They're a .org. This is not a government agency. They compile data. Our GDP numbers come from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. That is a federal government agency. They release this on their website quarterly, and the NBER will send you a notification that it's coming. And then, of course, on this site, there's a lot more information than just that. But this is the big news of the day, and it is today's news. Going back to this site, we're in recession. When this committee says we're in recession, the old definition would be met, 2 consecutive quarters of GDP growth. Now, the question of whether or not we're in a recession. Well, this does a nice job of showing us right here what the terms recession and the parts of the business cycle mean. These are in any 101, 102 textbook. It has what an expansion is, normal state of the economy, which recessions are brief. Descriptions of that. And then if you go to, here's a picture of the unemployment rate over time. We can see the unemployment rate skyrocketed in the last recession. Unemployment goes up when economies go down, and it's been coming down ever since very nicely. And then the question of whether or not we're in a recession would be in these announcements. And they made an announcement in June that February was the peak of U.S. economic activity, which means we have declined since then. So that means the NBER is saying that we are in a recession, or we have been in a recession. We have been in a recession. There it is. Another definition of the term. But according to current data, look at that, we're out of recession. So we won't know this officially until this committee says so with another announcement. If you look at these announcements, they seem to be bookending them. They tell us when the beginning is and when the end is. Or here it is. There's the end of the last one. So I'm guessing that in a couple of months we're going to get another memo or announcement from this committee, and they're going to say the recession ended somewhere at the end of Q2 or the beginning of Q3 because of our jump in GDP here. So these are the official numbers. These are some places you can get these official numbers and what they mean. I'm going to very quickly look around before I cut off, I think, and see if I can No, I'm not finding some other things here. I'll just show you some other things. I'm going to scroll through this. Some other news on older recessions. Just some things about this site that you might find interesting. Of course, that's always an interesting thing, isn't it? Career resources. And I think I've taken you through probably enough of this stuff. Some research here. This might be the same page we were already on. It is. This is something I wanted to show you. Here it is. This is what I was hoping to find. It was right there where I started. Anyway, if you poke around the site, there's a lot of stuff. But these are the recessions in U.S. history since these things have been collected. So you might find this interesting, and you might find it even useful for your history classes, since so much of history is determined by the state of economies. So there they are. There's our current recession. They haven't put an end to it yet. My guess is this is coming soon. There's the Great Recession beginning in 2007. In June is the official beginning, beginning in December 2007, ending in June 2009 officially. This is right here, what's called the bursting of the dot-com bubble, the recession that began in March of 2001 and ended by November of 2001. Recall, November is after September, and 2001 was the year of the September 11th attacks. I can tell you that when that occurred, there were a lot of questions about what the economic impacts were, and for most market watchers, this was a very pleasant surprise. That was one that was well navigated, and quite a happy recovery, for lack of better terms. And this is the one that ended the tenure of George H.W. Bush. He lost re-election in November of 1990 as the economy was in recession. But by March, we were out of recession. And of course, inauguration was in January of 1991. So the point there is that recessions often treat incumbents to political office badly. And interestingly, we're at one of those kind of times now where it's going to be a question of fiscal policy going forward because of the current state of the economy. And going back again, where we are is tending to look in the rearview mirror, because quarter three, first quarter, January, February, March, second quarter, April, May, June, third quarter, July, August, September. We're already in October 29th. This is almost a month old. So how are we doing? Well, this is rearview mirror stuff. Cases are rising. Could be worse than this. But according to the unemployment numbers that came out this morning, the unemployment is falling. So that's the nature of economics, or macroeconomic variables, is trying to figure those things out. And that's why when you have 100 economists in the room and you ask for a forecast, you get 200 answers, because on the one hand you have this, on the other hand you have that.